They say every demon was once something else. A human, an angel, a dream turned nightmare. But what happens when a man becomes a god through death itself? This is the story of Zhong Kui, the scholar who died for honor and was reborn as the universe's most feared demon hunter. But before he became a legend, he was simply a man who wanted to pass a test. In the glorious Tang dynasty, in the year 618, there was only one path to greatness for a poor man: the imperial examinations. Pass, and you could advise emperors. Fail, and you remained nobody. Zhong Kui was brilliant. His essays were said to make scholars weep with envy. His poetry could capture the soul of the cosmos in 3 lines. But he had one problem. He was ugly. And in a society that believed a man's face reflected his soul, this was an unforgivable sin. Zhong Kui walked through the imperial city of Chang'an, tall and powerfully built, but with a face marked by a prominent birthmark and rough features that caused children to stare and merchants to turn away. A group of noble candidates snickered as he passed. They let anyone take the examination these days, one of them said. Even demons. Zhong Kui's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Your choice will determine not just the game's ending, but what kind of demon queller you've become. Are you Zhong Kui, the destroyer, who eliminates evil wherever it appears? Are you Zhong Kui, the redeemer, who seeks to save even the most lost souls? Are you Zhong Kui, the reformer, who changes systems instead of just fighting symptoms? Or are you something else entirely, a new interpretation of what it means to pursue justice in an unjust universe? Black Myth. Zhong Kui is more than just a game about fighting demons. It's a game about what it means to suffer injustice and choose not to become what hurt you. It's about the thin line between hero and monster, and how that line is maintained not through purity, but through constant, conscious choice. It's about the fact that the ugliest faces can hide the most beautiful souls, and the most beautiful appearances can hide the ugliest truths. It's about friendship that transcends death, about honor that survives corruption, and about justice that never gives up, even when the universe itself seems rigged against it. When Zhong Kui died on those palace steps over 1,000 years ago, he could have become a vengeful ghost. He could have haunted the palace, killed the emperor, destroyed everyone who had wronged him. That would have been understandable, even justified. But instead, he chose a different path. He chose to protect rather than punish, to serve rather than take revenge, to use his pain to prevent others from experiencing the same. That choice, made in a moment of transformation between death and resurrection, defined everything that came after. And now, as you prepare to enter his world, you'll face similar choices. When you encounter injustice, will you respond with rage or with wisdom? When you face enemies, will you see monsters or victims? When you're given power, will you use it to dominate or to protect? These aren't abstract questions. In Black Myth, Zhong Kui, they're the core of gameplay, the decisions that will shape your experience and define your version of a legendary demon queller. The game launches soon, and when it does, you'll have the chance to walk in the footsteps of one of Chinese mythology's most complex and compelling figures. You'll experience his pain, his transformation, his eternal mission. You'll understand why his image has protected homes for over a millennium, why his story has resonated across centuries, and why, in our modern age, his message of justice, understanding, and persistent courage matters more than ever. Zhong Kui stands at the boundary between the mortal and divine, between order and chaos, between mercy and judgment. He is ugly and beautiful, terrifying and comforting, human and divine, all at once. He is the answer to the question of what happens when injustice tries to break a good person, and that person refuses to break. He is proof that suffering can create strength, that rejection can forge purpose, and that death itself cannot stop someone who truly believes in justice. This is the story of Zhong Kui, the demon queller, the scholar who died for honor and was reborn as a god, the ugly hero whose face became a symbol of protection, the eternal warrior who fights not because he hates demons, but because he loves the innocent, the complicated, flawed, magnificent being who proved that what matters isn't how the world sees you, but how you choose to see yourself. And soon, his story will be yours to experience, to shape, and to continue. The demons are waiting. The celestial bureaucracy is watching. The scales of cosmic justice hang in balance. Zhong Kui's sword is ready. The only question is, are you ready to wield it? Are you prepared to face the darkness, both in the world and in yourself? Are you willing to fight for justice, knowing the fight never truly ends? If so, then step into the world of black myth. Zhong Kui, your legend is about to begin. The combat will be visceral and meaningful. Every demon you face will have a story, a reason for becoming what they are. You'll have to decide whether to destroy them outright or try to save them, knowing that some can be redeemed and others cannot. Your choices will matter, affecting not just individual demons, but the cosmic balance itself. Fight with pure destruction, and you'll become the very tyranny you oppose. Fight with pure mercy, and you'll allow evil to flourish. The path of true justice lies somewhere in between, and finding that path will be your greatest challenge. The world will be rich with Chinese mythology and culture, but presented in a way that feels fresh and relevant. You'll explore locations from bustling Tang Dynasty cities to the misty realms between life and death, from the bureaucratic halls of heaven to the torture chambers of hell. You'll use weapons and magic that reflect Zhong Kui's character, tools of justice rather than mere destruction. And you'll uncover the deeper mystery hinted at in the mirror demon's vision, the cosmic imbalance that threatens to unleash demons on a scale never seen before. As you play, you'll realize that Zhong Kui's greatest power isn't his sword or his celestial authority. It's his understanding. He knows what it means to be rejected. So he understands the demons born from rejection. He knows what it means to rage against injustice. So he understands the spirits consumed by rage. He knows what it means to die for your principles. So he understands the cost of true commitment. This understanding is what makes him effective, and it's what will make you effective as you take on his role. The story doesn't end with victory. It can't, because injustice never fully ends. But it does culminate in a moment of profound choice. You'll face a demon more powerful than any other, born not from individual injustice, but from the accumulated suffering of countless souls. This demon represents the fundamental darkness in the universe, the shadow that can never be eliminated. And you'll have to decide how to deal with it. Destroy it, knowing it will reform elsewhere. Seal it, knowing it will eventually break free. Or find a way to transform it, to turn suffering into something else, something that could actually help the world. And he saw something else. He saw that eventually, thousands of years in the future, there would come a time when demons would rise again in great numbers. Not because of injustice, but because of something else. A fundamental shift in the universe, a cosmic imbalance that would require a different kind of hero to address. Zhong Kui would be there, still fighting, still protecting. But he would need help. He would need someone who understood both the mortal world and the divine, someone who could bridge the gap he had spent centuries trying to close. The vision faded. The mirror demon looked at Zhong Kui. That is your future. Eternal service, eternal struggle, and ultimately, the need to trust others to continue your work. Can you accept that? Zhong Kui was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. I can. Because this was never about me. It was about creating a world where what happened to me doesn't happen to others. If that takes eternity, so be it. If it requires me to eventually step aside for someone else, that's fine too. What matters is the work, not the worker. The mirror demon smiled. Then you truly have transcended. You have become what you needed to become. Do what you must, Demon Queller. I am ready. Zhong Kui raised his sword, but this time, he did it with compassion instead of rage. I'm sorry, he said to the mirror demon. Sorry that truth, without kindness, led you here. Sorry that you couldn't find balance. In your next life, may you find a better way. The sword came down, and the mirror demon dissolved into light, finally at peace. After that encounter, Zhong Kui changed. He became less rigid, less certain. He began to see his work not as a mission to destroy evil, but as an effort to tip the cosmic scales toward good, knowing that the scales would always have weight on both sides. He worked with demons when he could, destroying them only when necessary. He trained other demon quellers, teaching them not just how to fight, but how to understand. And he continued his reforms, slowly but steadily, making the celestial bureaucracy and the mortal world more just. Years turned to decades, decades to centuries, centuries to millennia. Zhong Kui became a legend, then a myth, then a symbol. His image appeared in countless homes, not just in China, but throughout the world as his story spread. He was painted on doors to ward off evil. He was invoked in prayers for justice. Children were told stories of the ugly hero who proved that appearances don't matter. And through it all, Zhong Kui continued his work, tireless and eternal. But he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the scholar who died on palace steps because his face didn't fit society's standards. He never forgot Du Ping's loyalty, or his sister's wisdom, or the emperor's guilt. He never forgot any of it, because those memories were what gave his existence meaning. They were the reason he fought. Every demon he faced, he saw the potential for the person they could have been. Every victim he saved, he saw the person he was meant to protect. Every corrupt official he exposed, he saw the system that had destroyed him. And now, thousands of years after his death and transformation, as the world enters a new age with new challenges and new forms of injustice, Zhong Kui's story becomes more relevant than ever. In the game Black Myth, Zhong Kui, you will step into the role of this legendary demon queller. You will face the demons that plague both the mortal world and the celestial realm. You will make the choices that define justice versus revenge, mercy versus punishment, order versus freedom. The game will let you experience the moments we've talked about. You'll walk through Zhong Kui's origin, feeling the humiliation of rejection and the rage of injustice. You'll fight your first demons, learning what it means to battle enemies who are reflections of your own pain. You'll navigate the celestial bureaucracy, exposing corruption and making powerful enemies. You'll face impossible choices about who deserves redemption and who deserves destruction. And you'll discover secrets about the nature of demons, justice, and the universe itself that will challenge everything you think you know. But more than that, you'll understand why Zhong Kui matters. In a world that still judges people by appearances, that still values connections over merit, that still creates injustice, and then punishes those who suffer from it, Zhong Kui's story is a reminder. A reminder that ugliness can hide beauty, that rejection can forge strength, that death can become purpose, and that one person's commitment to justice can echo through eternity. The game will feature the complex characters we've discussed. You'll interact with Du Ping, whose loyalty transcends death itself. You'll face celestial officials who are neither purely good nor purely evil, but complicated beings with their own agendas. You'll encounter demons who were once victims, and victims who are becoming demons. You'll meet Zhong Kui's sister, who provides a human perspective that keeps him grounded. And you'll face the mirror demon and others like it, enemies that force you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and your mission. But he also saw something else. He saw his compassion, his loyalty, his unbreakable commitment to protecting others. He saw the scared young scholar who had only wanted to be accepted. He saw the friend who had valued Du Ping's companionship above all else. He saw the brother who had loved his sister. He saw all of it, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly, all mixed together in a complicated truth. The mirror demon spoke. Now you understand. Everyone is like this, good and evil mixed together. You hunt demons, but demons are just the parts of people that grew out of control. The rage, the pain, the desire for revenge. You have all of these things too. The only difference is that you found a way to channel them. But that doesn't make you better than the demons you hunt. It just makes you luckier. Zhong Kui lowered his sword. You're right, he said. I am like them. I always have been. The mirror demon seemed surprised. Then why hunt us? Why not join us? Zhong Kui shook his head. Because there's a difference between having darkness inside you and letting that darkness hurt others. I have rage, but I use it to fight injustice. I have pain, but I use it to understand victims. I have a desire for revenge, but I channel it into protection. The demons I hunt have the same feelings, but they let those feelings consume them. They let their pain become everyone else's problem. The mirror demon considered this. So you admit that the line between you and the demons is thin? Zhong Kui nodded. It's razor thin. That's why I can do this job. I understand them because I am them, or could have been. Every demon I face is a version of myself that made different choices. The mirror demon actually smiled. You're wiser than most celestial beings. They think they're purely good, purely righteous. But you understand the truth. Everyone has the potential for both creation and destruction. What matters is what you choose to do with that potential. Zhong Kui asked the question that had been haunting him. Can you be saved? Can demons like you be redeemed? The mirror demon thought for a long moment. Some can. Those who became demons through circumstance, through pain they didn't choose, through injustices done to them. They can be helped, redirected, given purpose. But others? No. Some demons are created by choices, not circumstances. People who knowingly chose cruelty, who enjoyed causing pain, who made themselves into monsters. Those cannot be saved, only stopped. And which are you? Zhong Kui asked. The mirror demon looked at him sadly. I was a philosopher once. I saw truth above all else. But truth without compassion is cruelty. I showed people truths they couldn't handle, destroyed them with revelations they weren't ready for, all in the name of honesty. I became a demon not because someone wronged me, but because I valued being right over being kind. So no, I cannot be saved. I am too far gone. But I can give you something before you destroy me. What? Zhong Kui asked. The mirror demon raised its hand, and Zhong Kui saw a vision. He saw the future. He saw how his reforms would slowly change the celestial bureaucracy and the mortal world. He saw fewer demons being created, fewer people suffering injustice. But he also saw the cost. He saw how some celestial officials, resentful of the changes, would plot against him. He saw how some mortals, uncomfortable with divine intervention, would reject his help. He saw how he would become increasingly isolated, respected but not loved, feared but not understood. But the Jade Emperor added a warning. This is dangerous work. Mortals do not always welcome divine intervention. Some will see you as meddling. Others will resist your help out of pride or fear. And the demons you've been hunting will see you as a greater threat than ever, because you'll be preventing their very existence. Are you prepared for this? Zhong Kui smiled. Your Majesty, I died on palace steps because I refused to accept injustice. I've spent centuries fighting its consequences. Now you're giving me a chance to fight its causes? I was born prepared for this. The Minister of Records was stripped of his position and sentenced to experience every moment of suffering he had caused, a punishment that would last eons. The corrupt officials he had worked with were similarly punished, and the celestial bureaucracy began its slow, painful process of reform. It wasn't easy. Old habits die hard, even among immortals. But slowly, things began to change. In the mortal world, people noticed something strange. Unjust situations seemed to resolve themselves more often. Corrupt officials suddenly faced consequences. Victims of injustice found unexpected advocates. It wasn't always obvious, and it didn't always work, but there was a shift. A sense that maybe the universe was paying attention after all. And in homes throughout China, the image of Zhong Kui, the ugly demon queller with a righteous sword, became not just a ward against evil spirits, but a symbol of justice itself. But Zhong Kui's story doesn't end there. Because in taking on this new role, he discovered something that would challenge everything he thought he knew. He discovered that some demons couldn't be prevented, that some injustices were so deep, so fundamental to existence itself, that they would always create suffering. He discovered that the universe has a dark side, a shadow that cannot be eliminated, only balanced. This revelation came when Zhong Kui encountered a demon unlike any he had faced before. It called itself the Mirror Demon, and it had a unique power. It forced people to see themselves as they truly were, stripping away all illusions and self-deceptions. For corrupt people, this was torment, forcing them to confront their own evil. But for good people, it was just as devastating, because it showed them their flaws, their hypocrisies, their small cruelties and failures. No one could face the Mirror Demon and remain unchanged. Zhong Kui hunted this demon for months, finally cornering it in an abandoned temple. But when he prepared to strike, the Mirror Demon did something unexpected. It showed Zhong Kui his own reflection, not his physical appearance, but his true self. And what Zhong Kui saw horrified him. He saw his own rage, still burning after all these centuries. He saw his arrogance, his certainty that he was always right. He saw how his quest for justice had become its own kind of tyranny, how he had sometimes hurt innocent people in his pursuit of corrupt ones. If we don't fix the system, then we're no better than the corrupt officials who wronged me in life. We become the very thing we claim to oppose. The throne room fell silent. Every celestial official present held their breath, waiting to see how the Jade Emperor would respond. Would he punish Zhong Kui for his insolence? Would he dismiss the claims? The Jade Emperor stood from his throne and walked down to where Zhong Kui knelt. He placed a hand on Zhong Kui's shoulder. "Rise," he said. Zhong Kui stood, confused. The Jade Emperor smiled sadly. "You remind me why I created this position in the first place." The role of Demon Queller was never just about hunting spirits. It was supposed to be about maintaining cosmic justice when the bureaucracy failed. But over the centuries, even that role became corrupted, turned into just another enforcement mechanism. The Jade Emperor turned to address his court. "Zhong Kui is correct. There is corruption in our ranks. And I have allowed it because maintaining order seemed more important than ensuring justice. But order built on injustice is no order at all. It is tyranny." He looked back at Zhong Kui. "I will grant your request. There will be an investigation. There will be reforms. But Zhong Kui, understand this. The officials you're accusing are powerful. They will fight back. They will make your existence miserable. They may even try to strip you of your position. Are you prepared for that?" Zhong Kui nodded. "I've been prepared for that since the day I died, Your Majesty. I didn't choose an easy path then, and I won't choose one now." The Jade Emperor laughed. Spoken like the scholar who once faced an emperor and told him his system was broken. "Very well. You will lead the investigation. You will have full authority to question anyone, examine any records, pursue any lead. And when you find corruption, you will root it out, no matter how high it reaches." What followed was a period of upheaval in the celestial bureaucracy. Zhong Kui investigated tirelessly, uncovering networks of corruption that spanned centuries. Powerful officials were exposed. Ancient deals were brought to light. Demons who had been protected were finally brought to justice. But the backlash was severe. The officials Zhong Kui exposed turned their followers against him. Rumors spread that he was power-hungry, that he was overstepping his authority, that he was unstable and dangerous. Some demons, learning that their protectors had been removed, went on rampages, causing chaos in the mortal world. The corrupt officials blamed Zhong Kui, claiming his investigation had destabilized the cosmic order. There were calls for his removal, for his punishment. The pressure was immense. But Zhong Kui persisted, supported by the Jade Emperor and by the memory of everyone who had ever been wronged by a corrupt system. The investigation reached its climax when Zhong Kui discovered the darkest secret of all. One of the highest celestial officials, a being called the Minister of Records, had been deliberately creating demons. He had been manipulating events in the mortal world to cause injustice, suffering, and rage, which would then spawn demons. Why? Because demons created work for the celestial bureaucracy. They justified the bureaucracy's existence, its power, its resources. Without demons to fight, what purpose did the celestial official serve? It was a conspiracy to maintain relevance through manufactured crisis. When Zhong Kui brought this evidence to the Jade Emperor, even the supreme ruler was shocked. "You're telling me," the Jade Emperor said slowly, "that we have been creating the very problems we claim to solve?" Zhong Kui nodded. "For centuries, every unjust execution, every corrupt magistrate, every wrongful death that spawned a vengeful spirit. Many of them were influenced by the Minister of Records. He would whisper in the ears of officials, nudge them toward cruelty, ensure that injustice flourished. And then we would send demon hunters like me to clean up the mess, never addressing the root cause." The Jade Emperor's face darkened with fury. "Bring him to me." The Minister of Records was arrested, and his trial became the most significant event in celestial history. He stood before the Jade Emperor, defiant even in chains. "You act shocked," the minister said, "but you knew. Deep down you all knew. The celestial bureaucracy needs demons like the mortal world needs war. It gives us purpose. It justifies our authority. Without evil to fight, we are irrelevant." The Jade Emperor spoke with cold anger. "You have betrayed everything we are supposed to stand for. You have caused immeasurable suffering for your own benefit. What punishment could possibly fit such a crime?" The minister smiled. "Punish me if you want. But know this. I am not the only one. This system has always worked this way. I'm just the one who was honest about it. Remove me, and another will take my place. Because the system itself is the problem, not the individuals within it." Zhong Kui stepped forward. "He's right," he said. Everyone turned to look at him in shock. "The minister is right. The system is the problem. It always has been. In life, I was destroyed by a system that valued appearances over merit. In death, I've been serving a system that creates the problems it claims to solve. But here's what the minister doesn't understand. Systems are made of choices, individual choices, and we can choose differently." Zhong Kui turned to address the entire celestial court. "I was chosen to be the demon Queller because I understood injustice, because I had experienced it. But I've spent centuries treating symptoms instead of causes, hunting demons instead of preventing them. That ends now. We need to reform not just the celestial bureaucracy, but the entire system of cosmic justice. We need to actively work to prevent injustice in the mortal world, not just respond to it after it creates monsters." The proposal was radical. The celestial bureaucracy had always been reactive, dealing with problems after they occurred. Zhong Kui was suggesting they become proactive, intervening in mortal affairs to prevent injustice before it spawned demons. Many officials objected. "We cannot interfere with mortal free will," they argued. "We cannot control every decision humans make." Zhong Kui shook his head. "I'm not talking about controlling them. I'm talking about giving them tools to choose justice, better laws, better education, systems that actually work. We have infinite resources and cosmic power, and we use it to hunt demons. Imagine if we used it to prevent them instead." The debate raged for what felt like years in celestial time. But eventually, the Jade Emperor made his decision. "We will try Zhong Kui's approach. We will establish a new division of the celestial bureaucracy, dedicated to preventing injustice before it creates demons. Zhong Kui, you will lead it. You will have the authority to intervene in mortal affairs when you identify situations that could spawn demons. You will work to reform corrupt systems, support just leaders, and ensure that fewer people suffer the fate you did." Zhong Kui was faced with a choice. He could continue doing his job, hunting the demons he was told to hunt, knowing that the real problem would never be addressed. Or he could rebel, expose the corruption, and risk losing everything he had built. It was his sister who helped him decide. Yes, Zhong Kui had a sister, a detail often forgotten in the legends. Her name was Zhong Mei, and she was still alive, though elderly, living a simple life in a small village. Zhong Kui visited her one night, appearing in her dreams because he could no longer fully manifest in the mortal world without permission. "Mei," he said, "I need your wisdom." She looked at her brother, seeing past his fearsome reputation to the boy who had studied by candlelight and dreamed of changing the world. "What troubles you, brother?" Zhong Kui explained everything. The corruption, the hypocrisy, the choice before him. Zhong Mei listened carefully, then smiled. "You already know what you're going to do. You've never been able to stand injustice, even when fighting it cost you everything. Why would you start now?" Zhong Kui laughed bitterly. "Because I'm tired, Mei. I've been fighting for centuries. Maybe it's time to accept that the world is corrupt and just do my small part. Maybe trying to change everything is what got me killed in the first place." Zhong Mei shook her head. "No, brother. What got you killed was a system that feared your brilliance and your honesty. And what gave your death meaning was that you never compromised those values. If you start accepting corruption now, then you really did die for nothing." Zhong Kui looked at his sister. This mortal woman who had lived a humble life but understood more about honor than all the celestial officials combined. "You're right," he said. "I have to fight even if I lose. Even if it costs me everything again." Zhong Mei touched his face, the face that had caused him so much pain. "This face," she said, "is beautiful to me. Because it belongs to the man who never stopped fighting for what's right. Don't lose that, brother. Don't ever lose that." Zhong Kui hugged her, knowing it would be the last time. "Thank you, Mei, for always seeing me as I truly am." When Zhong Kui woke from the dream meeting, he made his decision. He would expose the corruption in the celestial bureaucracy. He gathered evidence, testimony from victims, records of bribes and favors. And then he did something unprecedented. He went to the Jade Emperor himself, the supreme ruler of the heavens, and demanded an audience. The celestial officials tried to stop him, but Zhong Kui was too powerful, too respected. They couldn't prevent him without causing a scandal. The Jade Emperor received him in the celestial throne room, a place of such magnificence that it made the Tang Dynasty palace look like a peasant hut. Zhong Kui approached and knelt, not out of fear, but out of respect for the position, if not the system. "Your Majesty," he said, "I come to report systematic corruption in the celestial bureaucracy. I have evidence that powerful spirits are being allowed to torment mortals because of bribes and connections. I request a full investigation and reform." The Jade Emperor looked at Zhong Kui with an expression that was impossible to read. "You realize what you're asking? Reform would require admitting the system is broken. It would undermine confidence in celestial authority. It would cause chaos." Zhong Kui met his gaze. "With respect, Your Majesty, the chaos is already here. It's just happening where you can't see it. In the mortal world. In the places where injustice creates demons faster than I can stop them. If we don't fix the system." One night, as Du Ping was elderly and near death himself, Zhong Kui appeared to him. It had been 50 years since that day at the palace. Du Ping was in his bed, surrounded by children and grandchildren. When he saw Zhong Kui's spirit standing in the corner of his room, he smiled. "Old friend," Du Ping whispered. "You came." Zhong Kui approached, looking exactly as he had the day he died. "I heard you've been busy," Zhong Kui said. "Changing the world on my behalf." Du Ping laughed weakly. "Someone had to. You were always too proud to do it yourself." They sat together, spirit and dying man, and talked about old times. About their studies together. About their dreams. About how everything had gone so wrong and yet, somehow, had still meant something. Du Ping looked at his friend with tears in his eyes. "Are you happy, Zhong Kui? In whatever you're doing now?" Zhong Kui considered the question. "Happy? No. But purposeful. Every demon I stop, every ghost I help pass on, I'm preventing someone else from suffering what we suffered. I'm making sure injustice doesn't create more monsters. That's not happiness, but it's enough." Du Ping nodded. "Then I can die in peace, knowing my friend found his way." Zhong Kui gripped his hand, the first physical touch he'd had in decades. "Thank you, Du Ping, for seeing past my face, for being my friend when no one else would, for making my death count for something." Du Ping smiled. "That's what friends do. They make each other's lives and deaths matter." He closed his eyes and breathed his last breath with Zhong Kui holding his hand. And Zhong Kui, the demon Queller, who had not cried since his death, wept. He wept for his friend, for himself, for all the years they had lost. But then he stood, wiped his eyes, and returned to his duty. Because demons don't stop just because you're grieving. And the world always needs protecting. The centuries passed. Dynasties rose and fell. The Tang gave way to the Song, then the Yuan, the Ming, the Qing. Through it all, Zhong Kui remained, an eternal constant in a changing world. He adapted to new types of demons, new forms of evil. Urban legends became his hunting ground. Cursed objects, possessed people, demons that fed on modern anxieties and fears. But his mission never changed. Stop the demons. Protect the innocent. Prevent injustice from creating more monsters. But Zhong Kui carried secrets, dark truths he told no one. The celestial judge who had given him his mission hadn't told him everything. There were things about the nature of demons, about the celestial bureaucracy, about his own transformation, that Zhong Kui had discovered on his own. And these secrets would change everything about how we understand his story. The first secret was this: demons are not born evil. Every demon Zhong Kui encountered had once been something else. A human consumed by rage. An animal twisted by cruelty. A spirit corrupted by suffering. The world created demons through injustice, and then sent Zhong Kui to destroy them. He was not preventing evil. He was cleaning up the consequences of systematic failure. He was a band-aid on a wound that never stopped bleeding. The second secret was darker. The celestial bureaucracy, the heavenly officials who were supposed to maintain cosmic justice, were often as corrupt as their mortal counterparts. Zhong Kui discovered this when he tried to report a powerful demon that was being protected by a celestial official. The official was taking bribes from the demon in exchange for overlooking its crimes. When Zhong Kui tried to expose this, he was warned to stay silent. Your job is to hunt demons, they told him, not to question how the system works. But Zhong Kui had never been good at staying silent. He continued investigating and discovered a conspiracy that went all the way to the highest levels of the celestial bureaucracy. Powerful spirits were being allowed to torment mortals because they had connections, because they paid bribes, because the system was more interested in maintaining power than dispensing justice. It was the imperial examination all over again, just on a cosmic scale. Appearance over substance. Connections over merit. Power over justice. Zhong Kui landed in the mortal world with the force of a meteor. He was in a small village at night. Buildings were burning. People were screaming. And in the center of the chaos was a ghost, a translucent figure with eyes full of hatred and hands dripping with blood. The ghost saw Zhong Kui and laughed. Another one? How many must I kill before they understand? I was innocent. Zhong Kui drew his sword. I know, he said quietly. I know you were innocent. I know you were wronged. The ghost paused, confused. Then why are you here to stop me? Because you're killing the wrong people, Zhong Kui said. These villagers didn't execute you. They didn't judge you. They're just trying to live their lives. And you're making them suffer for someone else's crime. The ghost shrieked. They stood by and did nothing. They're all complicit. Zhong Kui shook his head. No, they're just scared and powerless, like you were. Killing them makes you the same as the magistrate who killed you. It makes you a monster. The ghost attacked, moving with supernatural speed, but Zhong Kui was faster. His sword blazed with light, and he met the ghost's charge. They fought through the burning village, two souls consumed by rage, one trying to stop the other from making his mistakes. Zhong Kui realized something during the fight. He was stronger than the ghost, but only because he had chosen a different path. They had the same fury, the same pain. The only difference was that Zhong Kui had been given a purpose for his rage. He disarmed the ghost and pinned it down with his sword. The ghost struggled, weeping now instead of laughing. I just wanted justice, it cried. I just wanted someone to acknowledge what happened to me. Zhong Kui knelt beside the ghost. I acknowledge it, he said. You were wronged. The magistrate who killed you was corrupt and cruel. What happened to you was unjust." The ghost looked up at him, surprised. Then the ghost saw Zhong Kui's face, really saw it, and understood. "You were wrong too," the ghost whispered. Zhong Kui nodded. "I was. But I'm not going to let that pain create more pain. And neither are you." Zhong Kui raised his sword. "This is going to hurt," he said. "But on the other side, there's peace. There's rest. There's judgment for those who wronged you, and it will be real judgment, not revenge. Trust me." The ghost nodded slowly, too tired to fight anymore. "Do it." Zhong Kui brought down his sword, and the ghost dissolved into light, finally released from its suffering. The village stopped burning. The screaming stopped. And Zhong Kui stood alone in the ashes, his first mission complete. But he felt no triumph, only sadness, because he knew this was just the beginning. There were thousands, millions of spirits like that ghost, all of them victims of injustice, all of them turning their pain into destruction. And it was his job to stop them one by one forever. He looked down at his sword, still glowing with residual energy. "This is my path now," he thought. "Not the one I wanted, but the one I have. And I'll walk it until there are no more demons to quell." Over the following years, Zhong Kui became a legend. Stories spread of the ugly demon hunter who appeared whenever supernatural evil threatened the innocent. He fought ghosts in haunted mansions. He battled demons in mountain passes. He confronted fox spirits who seduced and destroyed men. He even descended into the underworld to chase down demons who had escaped judgment. Everywhere he went, he was both feared and revered. People hung his image in their homes for protection. They told stories of his exploits. But no one really knew him. No one understood what drove him. Except Du Ping. His old friend had kept his promise to the emperor. He had spread Zhong Kui's story, ensuring his legend grew. But more than that, Du Ping had done something extraordinary. He had used his position as an official to change the examination system. He had argued, fought, and politicked to ensure that appearance would no longer be a factor in judging candidates. It took decades, but slowly, the system began to change. And Du Ping did it all in Zhong Kui's name, ensuring that his friend's death would have meaning. Zhong Kui approached the bridge. "I am a man who died unjustly," he said. "I am a scholar who was denied his rightful place. I demand to speak to whoever is in charge." The judge almost smiled. "You demand? Spirit, do you understand where you are? This is not the mortal world where your cleverness and words matter. Here, only karma and divine law have power." Zhong Kui's eyes burned with fury. "Then divine law is as corrupt as mortal law. If the heavens allowed what happened to me, then the heavens are unjust." The judge's expression hardened. "You dare accuse the celestial order? For that alone, I should send you to the lowest hell." But there was something about Zhong Kui's defiance that intrigued him. "Tell me," the judge said, "if you could return to the mortal world, what would you do?" Zhong Kui didn't hesitate. "I would expose every hypocrite. I would punish every corrupt official. I would prove that appearances mean nothing, and that true merit lies in action and character." The judge considered this. "And you believe you have the right to judge others, when you yourself died in a rage, possibly committing a sin by taking your own life?" Zhong Kui paused. He hadn't thought about it that way. "Maybe I don't have the right," he admitted. "But someone must. Someone must stand for those who are wronged. Someone must fight for justice when the system fails." The judge looked at him for a long moment. Then he said something unexpected. "There is a position available. The celestial bureaucracy requires enforcers, those who hunt down spirits and demons that escape judgment and terrorize the mortal world. It is thankless work. You would be both feared and revered. You would see the worst of existence. And you would do it forever, with no rest, no peace, no reward except the knowledge that you are protecting others from the injustices you suffered." Zhong Kui understood immediately. "You want to make me a demon hunter?" The judge nodded. "More than that, a demon queller." one who not only destroys evil spirits, but prevents them from forming in the first place. The mortal world creates demons through injustice, cruelty, and suffering. You would go to places where such things are happening and stop them. You would be an agent of divine justice, filling the gaps that the celestial bureaucracy cannot reach. But know this, Zhong Kui. If you accept, you can never truly rest. You can never reincarnate. You will be bound to this purpose until the end of time itself. Most spirits would refuse. An eternity of service, of fighting, of witnessing suffering, with no hope of release? It sounded like hell. But to Zhong Kui, it sounded like exactly what he needed. If I do this, he said, I have one condition. The judge raised an eyebrow. You are in no position to make demands. Zhong Kui met his gaze unflinchingly. I keep my face. I don't want a beautiful face or an imposing one. I keep the face that was rejected, so that every demon I face, every spirit I judge, knows that I understand what it means to be cast aside, that I am not some perfect, celestial being judging from above. I am one of them, but I chose differently. The judge studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled a real smile. Very well, Zhong Kui. You will become the demon Queller. You will be given authority over all wandering spirits and demons. You will have access to celestial weapons and magic. And you will keep your face, as a reminder to both the living and the dead that appearances deceive. But remember this. The demons you hunt were once like you, victims of injustice, consumed by rage. Your job is not just to destroy them, but to prevent others from becoming them. Do you accept? Zhong Kui bowed. I accept. The judge raised his hand, and golden light surrounded Zhong Kui. It burned like fire, but felt like justice. When it faded, Zhong Kui was transformed. He wore the robes of an imperial official, the ones he had died trying to earn. In his hand was a sword, the demon-quelling blade, forged from his own righteous fury. His face remained the same, scarred and rough, but now it radiated power. He was no longer just Zhong Kui, the failed scholar. He was Zhong Kui, the demon Queller, servant of justice, protector of the innocent. Now go, the judge said. Your first task awaits. There is a village being terrorized by a vengeful ghost. A magistrate wrongly executed a man, and the man's spirit has returned to seek revenge. It is killing innocents. Stop it. Zhong Kui nodded and stepped off the golden bridge. He fell through the layers of reality, plummeting back toward the mortal world. As he fell, he heard the judge's voice one last time. Remember, Zhong Kui, you hunt demons, but you are also one of them. Never forget that. The emperor immediately gave orders. Zhong Kui's body was to be wrapped in the finest imperial silk, the kind reserved for high officials. He was to be buried with full honors, as if he had achieved the highest rank. And Du Ping, loyal Du Ping, was to oversee everything. The emperor knew it was too little, too late, but it was all he could do. That night, as Zhong Kui's body lay in state, something strange happened. The palace was afflicted with nightmares. Officials woke screaming. Guards saw shadows moving where there should be none. And the emperor himself had a dream. In the dream, Emperor Xuanzong was being chased by demons. Hundreds of them, with claws and fangs and eyes like burning coals. They wanted to tear him apart, to punish him for every unjust decision, every moment of weakness. The emperor ran through endless corridors, but there was nowhere to hide. The demons were closing in, and then suddenly they stopped. They screamed and fled. The emperor turned and saw a figure standing behind him. It was Zhong Kui, but this Zhong Kui was different. He wore the robes of an official, the ones he had been denied in life. His face was the same, but now it radiated power instead of shame. In his hand was a sword that seemed to burn with righteous fury. The demons cowered before him. Zhong Kui looked at the emperor and spoke. You denied me in life, but in death I will serve anyway. Not because I want to, but because honor demands it. I will protect you from the demons that plague your conscience and your kingdom. But remember this, your majesty. Every ghost I kill, every demon I vanquish. I do it wearing the face you rejected." Emperor Xuanzong woke up screaming. His servants rushed in, but he waved them away. He sat in the darkness, sweating, his heart racing. The dream had felt so real, too real. As dawn broke, the emperor made a decision that would change everything. He called for his court painters and gave them a description of what he had seen in his dream. "Paint him," the emperor commanded. "Paint Zhong Kui as I saw him, as a demon queller, as a protector, as a god." The painters worked for days, creating an image that was both terrifying and magnificent. Zhong Kui in his official robes, holding his demon-slaying sword, his face fierce and powerful. When it was complete, Emperor Xuanzong ordered the painting to be displayed throughout the palace. He made a proclamation. From this day forward, Zhong Kui is to be honored as an official of the Imperial Court, rank posthumously granted. His spirit serves as protector against demons and evil spirits. Every household shall display his image for protection. But the emperor did more. He summoned Du Ping, who had been mourning his friend in isolation. Du Ping entered the throne room, his eyes red from crying, his fine robes now wrinkled and stained. The emperor spoke gently. "Du Ping, your friend was wronged. By me, by my court, by our entire system. I cannot bring him back, but I can give him purpose in death. I am making Zhong Kui the official demon queller of the heavens. His spirit will protect not just me, but all of China from supernatural evil. And you, Du Ping, will be his living representative. You will ensure his legend spreads. You will make certain that everyone knows his name and his story." Du Ping looked up at the emperor with an expression that mixed gratitude and grief. "Why?" he asked. "Why do this now, when you could have just passed him in the first place?" The emperor had no good answer. "Because I was wrong," he said simply. "And now I must make it right, even if it's too late." Du Ping bowed deeply. "Then I accept your majesty. But know this. Zhong Kui died because he believed in justice and merit. If his story is to mean anything, those principles must become real, not just in death, but in life." The emperor nodded slowly. "Then help me make it so." This is where most tellings of the Zhong Kui legend end. A tragic death, an honorable emperor making amends, and the birth of a protector deity. But the real story, the one that black myth, Zhong Kui will let you experience, is just beginning. Because what happened to Zhong Kui after death? Where did his spirit go? How did he become the demon queller? That's where the tale becomes truly extraordinary. When Zhong Kui died on those palace steps, his spirit did not go gently into the afterlife. His rage, his sense of injustice, his unfinished purpose, all of it prevented him from moving on. Chinese cosmology teaches that the universe has many layers. The mortal world, the heavens above, and the underworld below. Between them are spaces, liminal places where spirits wander. Zhong Kui found himself in one of these places, a gray realm of mist and shadows, where the dead who cannot rest are trapped. He was not alone. The realm was filled with hungry ghosts, spirits consumed by desires and grudges from their mortal lives. They sensed Zhong Kui's rage, his pain, and they were drawn to him like moths to flame. But Zhong Kui was different from them. His anger was not selfish or petty. It was righteous. It was the fury of a man who had played by every rule and been punished anyway. And that made him dangerous. The hungry ghosts attacked him, trying to feed on his emotions, to drag him down into mindless suffering like them. But Zhong Kui fought back. With nothing but his will and his rage, he tore through them. He discovered that in this realm, thought became reality. His anger manifested as strength. His sense of justice became a weapon. The very characteristics that had made him suffer in life made him powerful in death. The ghosts fled from him, terrified. And Zhong Kui began to walk through the mist, searching for a way out, a way forward, a way to make sense of what had happened. He walked for what felt like years, though time moved strangely in that place. Eventually, he came to a great chasm. On the other side was a bridge made of golden light, leading up toward what he assumed was the heavens. Guarding the bridge was a celestial judge, an immortal official whose job was to determine which souls could ascend and which must descend to the 10 courts of hell for judgment. The judge was tall and ancient, with eyes that had witnessed eons. He looked at Zhong Kui with surprise. "You do not belong here," the judge said. "You are neither ascending nor descending. What are you?" The crowd began to murmur in agreement. Zhong Kui stood there, his face burning with shame and rage. He had known this would happen. He had always known. But hearing it spoken aloud, in front of the emperor, in front of everyone who mattered, it was more devastating than he had imagined. He looked at the emperor, hoping for justice, for reason. Emperor Xuanzong studied Zhong Kui carefully. The emperor was known as a wise and cultured ruler, a patron of arts and music. Surely he would see past appearances. The emperor spoke. "Chief Examiner Yang, you say his papers were extraordinary?" Yang bowed. "The finest I have ever read, Your Majesty. I cannot deny his intellectual gifts." The emperor nodded slowly. Then he said something that changed everything. "I appreciate your counsel, Yang. You are dismissed." Yang looked confused, but bowed and stepped back. The emperor stood, and everyone fell to their knees, including Zhong Kui. Emperor Xuanzong walked down from his throne and approached Zhong Kui. He spoke quietly, so only Zhong Kui could hear. "Stand up." Zhong Kui stood, trembling. The emperor looked into his eyes. "Tell me, scholar, do you believe you deserve to pass?" Zhong Kui's voice was steady despite his fear. "Your Majesty, I believe my words should speak for themselves." The emperor smiled slightly. "A diplomatic answer. But I asked what you believe." Zhong Kui took a breath. Then he spoke with all the frustration and pain of a lifetime. "I believe that I have spent every day of my life proving myself because of a face I did not choose. I believe that I have more knowledge, more dedication, and more loyalty than any of these men. I believe that judging a man by his appearance rather than his character is the greatest injustice. And I believe that if the Tang dynasty does this, it will rot from within, because it will miss the true talents who could save it." The throne room was silent. You could hear a pin drop. Emperor Xuanzong stared at Zhong Kui. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "Spoken like a true scholar," he said, unafraid to speak truth to power. "I like you, Zhong Kui." But then the emperor's face grew serious. "However," he said, "Yang is not wrong. You would face prejudice, mockery. Your effectiveness would be compromised by how others perceive you." The emperor returned to his throne. "I must think on this matter." The emperor turned to his court. "What say you all? Should this man pass?" Chief Examiner Yang immediately spoke. "Your Majesty, with respect, tradition must be upheld." Several other officials agreed, their voices rising. But then, from the crowd of new candidates, Du Ping stepped forward. He shouldn't have. He was risking his own new position. But he did it anyway. "Your Majesty," he said, "I have known Zhong Kui for 10 years. He is the most honorable man I have ever met. If you reject him, you reject the very principles our examinations claim to uphold. Merit over birth, wisdom over wealth, character over appearance." The emperor considered this. The tension in the room was unbearable. Then Emperor Xuanzong made his decision. He spoke clearly. "Zhong Kui, your examination papers demonstrate exceptional ability. However, I cannot appoint you to an official position at this time. The nature of court requires certain standards of presentation that, fairly or not, you do not meet. I am sorry." It was over. Zhong Kui had known it would end this way, but hope had made him believe otherwise. He felt something break inside him. All those years of study, all that effort, all that belief that merit could overcome everything. It was all for nothing. The emperor continued speaking, offering some consolation about future opportunities. But Zhong Kui heard none of it. He bowed mechanically, turned, and walked toward the palace exit. Du Ping tried to follow him, calling his name, but Zhong Kui kept walking. The other candidates parted before him like he was diseased. He walked through the palace halls, past the golden pillars and silk banners, past everything that represented the glory he would never be part of. When he reached the palace steps, he stopped. Below him was the city. Behind him was the life he had dreamed of. And inside him was a rage so profound it felt like it would consume him. What happened next would become legend, though the details vary depending on who tells the story. Some say Zhong Kui cursed the heavens. Some say he wept. But what every version agrees on is this. Zhong Kui walked to the top of the palace steps, looked out at the city one last time, and then he ran. Not away, but toward the palace wall. And he threw himself against it with all his strength, his head striking the stone with a sickening crack. Blood poured down the white marble steps. Courtiers screamed. Du Ping pushed through the crowd, shouting his friend's name, cradling Zhong Kui's broken body. But it was too late. Zhong Kui, the scholar who was too ugly to serve, died on the palace steps, his blood mixing with the morning rain. The emperor, who had witnessed everything, stood frozen on his throne. And in that moment, Emperor Xuanzong felt something he rarely felt: guilt. Then he met his friend Du Ping, a shorter, handsome man with an easy smile and expensive robes from a wealthy family. Du Ping grabbed Zhong Kui's shoulders with enthusiasm. "Brother, are you ready to change our destinies tomorrow?" Zhong Kui replied quietly that Du Ping would change his destiny, but his own fate remained uncertain. Du Ping wouldn't hear it. "Listen to me," he said. "You're the smartest man I know. Smarter than all those pretty-faced nobles combined. Tomorrow, everyone will see what I see. A genius." But Zhong Kui knew better. He had seen how the world worked. Still, Du Ping's friendship meant everything. In a society that judged him before he spoke, Du Ping had looked past his face and seen a soul. That night, Zhong Kui studied until dawn, his brush moving across paper like a sword through silk. He would prove them all wrong. Not with his face, but with his mind. The examination day arrived. Thousands of candidates gathered in the Imperial Palace courtyard, the air thick with incense and ambition. Zhong Kui and Du Ping entered together. As Zhong Kui walked past the examination officials, he noticed something. The chief examiner, a man named Yang, looked at him with instant disgust, then whispered something to his assistant. The assistant nodded and made a mark in his ledger. Before Zhong Kui had written a single word, he had already been judged. The examination lasted 3 days. Zhong Kui poured everything he had into his answers. Questions about governance, philosophy, poetry, history. He answered them all with precision and passion. He wrote about justice, about how a ruler must see beyond appearances to find true virtue. He wrote about loyalty and honor. He wrote with the fury of a man who had been underestimated his entire life. When he finally set down his brush on the 3rd day, he knew. He had written perfectly. Weeks passed. The results would be announced at the palace, in front of the emperor himself. This was the Tang dynasty's greatest spectacle, when new officials would be chosen to serve the realm. Du Ping came to Zhong Kui's small room the night before the announcement. He brought wine, good wine, and they drank together. Du Ping was nervous, but Zhong Kui was calm. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Zhong Kui said, "I am grateful to have had a friend like you." Du Ping laughed. "Don't talk like that. Tomorrow we celebrate together. Both of us." The day of the announcement arrived. The Imperial Palace was magnificent, with golden pillars and red banners streaming in the wind. Emperor Xuanzong sat on his throne, a figure of absolute power, surrounded by ministers and officials. The candidates stood in rows, waiting. The chief examiner Yang stepped forward, holding the scrolls with the results. He began reading names. Each successful candidate would step forward, kneel, and receive the emperor's blessing. Du Ping's name was called. He stepped forward, glowing with pride, and knelt. The emperor smiled and blessed him. Du Ping glanced back at Zhong Kui, his eyes saying, "You're next." More names were called. 10, 20, 30. Zhong Kui's name was not among them. The list went on. 50 names. 100. Still nothing. Zhong Kui felt his chest tighten. Then finally, Chief Examiner Yang paused. He looked directly at Zhong Kui with a cold smile. "There is one more matter," Yang said to the emperor. "A candidate named Zhong Kui. His examination papers were, I must admit, extraordinary. Perhaps the finest I have ever read." A murmur went through the crowd. Zhong Kui felt hope surge in his chest. But then Yang continued, "However, Your Majesty, I cannot in good conscience recommend him for service." The crowd fell silent. The emperor leaned forward, curious. "And why is that?" Yang asked. Yang gestured for Zhong Kui to step forward. Zhong Kui did, his heart pounding. Yang spoke loudly, so everyone could hear. "Because, Your Majesty, look at him. This man's face is monstrous, hideous. How can such a creature represent the glory of the Tang dynasty? How can he stand before foreign dignitaries? How can he advise Your Majesty when his very appearance suggests a corrupt and evil nature? The ancients teach us that a man's face reflects his character. I submit that despite his clever words, this man is fundamentally flawed.